Hello and welcome everybody once again to a new episode of Leadership in Blue Jeans. Today I have two splendid guests with me, Rodica and Bogdan. As usual, they're just going to introduce themselves. So let's get right into it and hand it over to Rodica.
Good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Rodica Lupu. I'm CEO of Lupu Operations. Lupu Operations is a company, a consultancy company. We help companies innovate in the first place. And secondly, we help them get the money for the innovation because we are also working with European funds and other types of funding. And one of our nicest passion is for startups, as you well know. So we work with small enterprises and startups as well.
Thank you very much, Rodica. Let's hand it over to Bogdan.
Hi, Frank. Hi, Rodica. Thanks for inviting me. I'm head of data center architecture and strategy at IDEMIA. It's a company that is a leader in augmented identity, in the augmented identity market. Basically, I lead a team that is designing and putting in place solutions around these types of topics and security related.
Wonderful. The elevator pitch. Super. Good. Let's dive into our main subject about leadership. So both of you are experienced leaders. And I thought for today, I wanted to explore with both of you a little bit actually some old statistics from 2015, where an old study was done in the US with a lot of people, I think hundreds of thousands, from Gallup, that was finding out that there were 50% of the employees who were thinking, or at least have once done it in their life, to actually leave their job, but because of their manager. Now that's what was already a big number back in 2015. And a few years ago, I think it was 2018, it's not so important, the same study, actually surveying around 1 million people, found out that the number is now 70%. So it's 70% of employees that at least once in their life were leaving their job because, in fact, the primary reason was that they were actually wanting to leave their manager. Tells me that leadership is an incredibly important subject, not just for the sake of the peace of mind and satisfaction of our employees, but also from a company perspective, of course. All these retention problems that come with this, finding new candidates, retraining them, and so on, is a huge burden. So I'm wondering if you would take an estimated guess or just share your opinion. What happened that this number went up in the span of only 3 or 4 years so wildly?
I would take a wild guess. It's difficult to say what happened because I think there's a lot of factors that needs to be explored. One of them being the change in the mentality of employees, because the work-life balance started to be an issue and people started to think about the quality of their life more than about the money they get from the job. So there's a shift in mentality. But I think there's also an issue related to education. I think that what we're witnessing today is a society where we have a lot of creation and innovation and a lot of wonderful ideas, but much less people prepared to give shape and life to these ideas, because people are less concerned with values. I think that the education is too pragmatic, if you want, nowadays. We went during the past 50 years or so towards specialization, towards going as narrow as you can, as deep as you can. And we somewhere on the road lost the meaning. And people have started to reconsider this, especially the young generation. I think they're starting to feel a bit, if you want, frustrated maybe, or confused, because they don't see values organizing their lives, but this consumerist approach. And probably they're looking for a bit more meaning in what they do in their life.
So in terms of purpose for what they spend their professional time with?
Yes, I think this becomes more and more an issue, and it's been lacking for a while. So probably this is why we see this increase in this, if you want, decision of people to leave because they don't identify with the values and with the culture that they find in a workplace. It can be the culture, it can be the manager, but usually a manager or a leader impacts very much the culture of the place, which is not.
Right. It's an interesting theory. What do you think, Bogdan?
Well, I agree with it. I was also thinking there are two components in this, or two variables in this statistic that you mentioned. On one side, you have the young people, the employees that are leaving. On the other side, you have the managers and their corresponding companies. You said what is the meaning of this rise? Why is it happening? Well, let's look at this from both perspectives, right? On one side, you have the managers, and frankly, with all these pandemics, with all these crises, we've seen this shift, right? When these companies went to a very financial-driven approach. Yeah, where they put a lot of pressure on budgets, on these kind of things, and I think many of them focused on their core businesses, and they, well, maybe not forgotten, right? But at least they didn't look so much in this social aspect of the business, on the organizational culture, and they probably didn't invest as much as in their core business. Of course, on the other hand, you have the employees, and with the new people coming in, we know that they are more driven. Yes, they need to have what you mentioned before, right? This kind of vision in their lives. They need to feel that they are part of something bigger,
meaningful.
Yeah. On the other hand, of course, there are other aspects which are less, happy than this one. And I want to mention here what was the social media impact. Yeah, the fact that we are always running for the like, the instant reward, and this puts a pressure on what their expectations are for the people that are leading them. Yeah, if you're looking for perfection and if you're looking for this instant reward, you cannot find it easy in this environment, right?
That's a very fascinating theory. Actually, you might be onto something there. What do you think? Social media playing a part in this?
It can play a part, like it plays a part in almost anything today. I mean, it's hard to
Fair point.
to miss social media in any phenomenon. Yeah, it does make sense to me because, of course, people have less patience. This behavior of using social media and instant gratification led to less patience and short-term thinking. And people started to have high expectations, but not just high expectations, but they want a lot very quickly. And they have very little tolerance for their managers. I've been there. I've been there as a owner of a company, right? When I like to express my vision and to make my vision known to my colleagues, to all of my colleagues. So I talk about future plans. And I usually dream big and I dream nicely, and they love the ideas and they love the vision, and yeah, it's great to be there. And of course, I always plan to get there in a couple of years, 3 years time, something like this. But it never happens like this, right? The market, you hit the market, and it doesn't happen in the rhythm that you hoped for. And some people understand this because they're more realistic and perhaps more trained or just more patient. And they go along because if steps are being taken towards that vision, that means we're fine, we're doing well. But some are not willing to wait and accept that things are not perfect. And they want it to happen. You said 2 years. It didn't happen in 2 years. I'm gone. You're not a good leader. So yes, this lack of patience and understanding. And I would add to this maybe, because it's a long discussion. There's many things, like I said, many ingredients. But I would also add an increase in selfishness, which also comes with a consumerist society. We're too self-centered nowadays. It's a general phenomenon, and it goes both for the managers and for the employees. And we tend to believe that everything revolves around our own being. And this makes room for a bit more aggression, if you want. People are less tolerant with each other and less willing to cope with each other's, let's say, negative traits, if you want. This is maybe not politically correct, but whatever. You understand my point?
Yes, I do.
There's more conflicts, there are more conflicts, and less people that are not being trained don't have the abilities to solve conflicts. They don't know how to deal with conflicts and go beyond them. So many times everything stops there, and
so you're saying
the
convenient way would be to actually go away.
Yeah,
like
this is the easy way.
Next,
it's the easier way. Yes, yes. It
Let's-
takes effort to build on a relationship.
Let's throw in a fun fact. So since 2020, 50% of the workforce are millennials or younger. What do you think that plays a role in the statistics going up?
It does play a role.
Exactly what we have been discussing, right?
I think millennials tend to change their job much faster, much more frequently, That's not necessarily bad. I mean, I totally understand this because they want to evolve, they want to have more experiences. It's a trend. Many times, we also have to consider something else. When we look at this statistic, we think that we read that 70% of people leave a company because of the manager. But then we also have to think about how people answer questions when they're being questioned about a decision they made or a decision they're about to make. Not all the answers are necessarily reflecting the actual decision-making process. I think that many times we do something for some reason that we're not really sure what that reason is, and then we try to rationalize why we did what we did. So many times it's not the manager necessarily that made that decision go through. It can be just a better opportunity.
Yeah.
Or just you think that it's better somewhere else, but there's nothing wrong with the place. It's just that place is better, or you think it's better. And sometimes
You're challenging
you feel like,
the accuracy of the...
Yeah, I am. I think that sometimes it's easier to say, it was the manager, because there was nothing else around to complain about. And now, honestly, whoever has a life without any conflicts with any manager, that's almost impossible, right? When you live with a person and work with a person every day, if you married that person, you were bound to fight with them sometimes.
Good point.
But when you work with them, it's almost impossible not to have conflicts. So this is why it's easy to blame it on the manager many times. It's not necessarily always true.
Okay. So in the same study, they actually were diving a little bit deeper as to what were the reasons. And apparently the key component, well, yes, you say there are many components, but another big component was that millennials and younger have certain expectations for their career. And one big one is that they find development opportunities. And at the same time, those that were saying, okay, I'm not getting my development opportunities there, weren't getting that development opportunity from their company / their manager, so they couldn't continue there with their career, so to speak. So that would be a reason to switch.
That's what I wanted to ask you. It's about personal development or about career development?
Yeah, it's kind of both, according to the study at least. It makes sense to me for some, but then at the same time, there's also yet another study I really have to look this up, which one it was, that was researching something that they call a leadership gap. So there's also a very, very small portion of managers actually have ever received management or leadership training.
That's true.
So on the one hand side, I see that this huge part of the population, like now 50% of the workforce, that has expectations, and a group of leaders that are most likely from an older or same generation, that don't know how to have these kinds of conversations with their associates. And it sounds to me like that is a really, really big clash.
tell me, Frank, I'm curious. When you are exactly in this field, leadership and coaching and so on, trainings, and when you are discussing with people about this topic, do you feel that they have this? I know there's a lot to discuss about leadership. There are a lot of things, but do you feel that they have this correct grasp about this topic? Because a lot of times I can see that there are people that they say this is a hoax. This is okay. It's just a new hype, new word that it's cool and we need to. Other people look like they are treating leadership like it's some kind of a religion, and they feel that they need to stay like this and speak very. I feel that there is an incorrect grasp about this notion, right? Do you feel that they are correctly anchored in this topic? Because if it's not this, then yes, probably we are not approaching this the correct way. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions and this gap that you're mentioning about it, right?
Yeah, that in itself is a really broad question, Bogdan, I have to say. So I almost want to almost play it back to you, and I will, but I want to say what I think. I want to say what I think anyway. So what I realize is that there's something that has changed in the past maybe even in the past decade, where also the leadership style didn't require a lot of knowledge about as much knowledge about leadership than it did today, especially when you were in an environment that was very much top-down driven. So in the sense of the manager is the one that's also supposed to be having all the answers all the time, and at the same time is also the only one who is allowed to have the answers. It's an extreme example, but very top-down hierarchical. And we're moving away from those systems in many parts around the world. For several reasons, because we discovered that talent, acquiring talent, keeping talent is a thing that requires from us as leaders that we give people room to grow, that we keep them engaged, right? So that we create an environment in which they can actually not only discover new talents, but also let the talents that they have shine. And so that's something that's been ongoing for 10, 15 years. At an accelerated pace. So that's why I would say, to answer your questions the way I understood it, is that today when you speak with managers, that there's a big part of this manager population that is only partially aware of what their associates are actually expecting of them, and sometimes they're even a little bit unaware of what their company is expecting of them as a leader. Like, hold on a minute, isn't it like I should be telling you what to do and you do it? Isn't it as simple as that? I'm exaggerating a little, but in essence, it's still quite prevalent.
Yeah.
Do you see that also?
Yeah, I think. Look, I'm going to say something. Maybe I had this reaction when I told this, because it's not very easy to put these two things together. At some point, and I think it was when I actually got this correct grasp of what leadership is when I had myself a training to learn how to train dogs. Of course, I'm not by any chance making any comparison between dogs and people.
But it would have been a nice opening for me.
but when I'm telling people about this is or why I'm telling people about this is because I'm asking them, do you understand how is it that you create this relationship with these animals with which you do not speak their language? Let's be very clear about it. You cannot go to some dog or something like this and tell him, look, it could be nice. What are your interests? I think we should work as a team and do this, right? It is not possible to do that.
It's probably not going to work.
It's not going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so imagine if you're taking all this away from this, what are the skills that you can employ to actually create this relationship with that animal and try to find together to reach the same objective. Yes. In that meaning, in that moment, you understand that there is a completely different layer or layers of skills and competencies that you must gain in order to be a successful, leader, whatever you want to call it. But in the end, you want to reach the same objective, and it's everywhere. It's in how you look and you are paying attention, in how you're communicating, in what your posture is. Everything for that person. Let's take away that analogy with the dogs, right? But when you're talking with that person, all these things, they are combined and put together in order to create the the environment to be able to reach together the objective that you want to.
So I would love to hear you about that also, but just for me to summarize what you were saying is, from that experience with the dogs, you were learning, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were learning that there are, layers of communication to be discovered that you were unaware of, or what were you trying to say?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Communications and errors that I made. Yeah, because again, when I first got in contact with this topic, it looked to me very romantic, Leadership is something that, there are people that think that they are born with it.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So Rodica, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if you're gonna like this, but I see it a bit differently. Not that I disagree. I agree that there are several layers of communication, but what I would like to point is that it's not that I think leaders are born and you cannot learn about leadership. I just think that it can't be broken down into skills, really, for real. I think that leadership is a lot about authenticity. And I think that a good leader can be a good leader despite some miscommunications or mistakes that they may make in the communication they have with people. Because what leadership is to me is the capacity to, or talent or whatever, or knowledge or whatever you want to call it, to create that kind of environment, like you said, and energy that makes people follow you, basically. And people always follow something, again, that makes sense. The why. I think that if you can have a why, if you're very clear about your why, and you can make it clear to the others, and you can take enough feedback from them and listen to them enough to understand and to figure out whether that why is enough for them as well, then things tend then to naturally fall into place. Because when there is this climate of authenticity and clarity as to why we come to work and why we're doing what we're doing and where we want to get from here and why is it that we want to get there, when you have this kind of clarity and you leave and you keep the environment transparent and there's room for everybody to state their opinions, there's also room for feedback, and the feedback goes both ways. And as long as you can have your team and the people you work with give you feedback every once in a while, when there's time for it, then you can somehow maintain the balance, because it's all about maintaining a balance. Things are not going to be perfect every day. There are going to be days when you're going to have issues with some people and other days when you're going to have issues with others. People go like this because they have issues in their personal life, and even a great employee sometimes can fail you because something happened in their family or with their dog or whatever. So, but this kind of issues that are daily stuff can always be solved if you have the right climate. And I think that the right climate depends on this why, and on making clear that everybody's on the same page with this. Of course, what I'm saying here may seem a little bit idealistic in a corporation. It works for a small enterprise. It works for a company where you have 50 employees or maybe less than 100. From 100 on, things get a little more complicated because then you get down to the leadership of the manager. Now I'm speaking as a company owner. Maybe it's a bit easier to have clarity. When you're a manager in a bigger company, it may be a bit more difficult, but you have to get it. You have to get there. I think that if you manage to get there, if you manage to get clear with why you're doing what you're doing, and you can communicate this to the others, things should normally go well. I mean, there shouldn't be many challenges. It's just little issues that you can work on, but there's room, there's space to work on them.
One question, this why that you're talking about is can be actually, or can it be treated as a what also? And what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah, well, usually I start with a why and then I go on with, okay, why we want to accomplish something, how we're going to do it, what we're going to do to get there. And the what, of course, is debatable. Sometimes some people have a vision about the what we should do to get there, and other people have a different vision on what we should do. But as long as we all agree with where we're going and why we want to get there, then everybody's willing to listen.
The final objective, right?
Yes.
Yes, the clarity. And I mean, you need to get a dog to understand this. I guarantee you. This clarity that she's talking about, it's exactly the same thing. It's like, if you don't know what to do, and if you're, maybe I should do this, maybe I should. Imagine immediately, nobody can.
You're driving crazy. He's driving crazy.
Nobody can follow you.
Yeah.
If you don't have this clarity, right? I mean, I know you cannot be perfect and you cannot be right be right every time. Yeah. But at least you need to look in yourself, look at the best way you think, the correct way to approach that, and stay on that path. Right?
Okay. That makes sense also.
When I'm thinking about the dog metaphor that you brought, which is actually quite interesting, just think about the fact that if you throw something ahead, the dog will automatically go to get it. So what a leader should do is to just show, where that thing that we have to grasp is, and to point towards it, and then everybody will go to get it.
You were hinting on that it is becomes easier for you as a company owner to speak about the why. You're practically creating it.
Yes.
But you were also hinting on that it's a lot harder for, let's say, the middle manager in a larger corporation.
Yes.
As a middle manager in a larger corporation, you don't necessarily, it's very unlikely that you're the one who actually, leads with the big visions and the purpose of the company as to what they want to do for their clients and why they exist and all that. So how do you keep your people engaged and connected with a purpose when you're running the, sales operations team or even less mundane jobs? Do you think it's possible even?
Oh, I think it's possible, definitely. People do it. I mean, there are people who can do it and successfully. I think it's more difficult as a manager to grasp this clarity, but I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just a matter of personal effort, and I think that managers should be trained how to internalize the company vision. I mean, every time we talk to companies and explain how important it is to have clarity about the vision, the mission, the mission and the values. So, a lot of people laugh about this, but this is not laughable at all. No. Because if you take this seriously and you really do it properly, your managers will understand. They should be part of it. When we designed our own values and mission and vision in my company, I didn't do it myself. We all sat together and we throw in the values. Everybody's values was welcome there. And then we worked on them until we all agreed on 10 things that were most important to all of us. And we're trying not to forget this. And you have to keep reminding people why that was important for them at some point, because we forget.
Yeah, if you stop talking about this as the leader, then it is no longer real.
Exactly. Everybody stops talking. And if managers take this seriously and learn to internalize these values and act upon them, first of all, let me say one thing. When you go to get a job, and this is for people who are looking for a job, I would like to give you an advice if you allow me. When you go to get a job, it's a two-way interview in the first place. It's not just me interviewing the future employee. They should be interviewing me as well. And when they're not doing it, I'm actually almost obliging them to do it, because I want to make sure that if somebody comes in my company, they're there because they really want it, because it's suitable for them, because they really like the company, the environment, the people, whatever is going to happen to them in that company, in my company. So I think that people should only get a job in a place where they're very sure that it's the right environment and place for them, because it's like, you know, it's like in a marriage. You don't settle, don't compromise, because it's going to be hard anyway. It's going to be difficult. So why not at least go for someone that you really love? And then it's going to be a bit easier, you know?
So, it's easier to make the compromise, right?
It's easier to make the compromise and you know, forget about the dark sides that you don't like, and even get to like it at some point. So as long as you as a manager took the job because you like the company, because you agree with what they do, with what they produce, with the way they operate, then it shouldn't be too difficult to get all those ideas, all those values, to internalize those values, to get that strategy, to understand the strategy, and to be a part of the strategy, to contribute to it, to be like an entrepreneur, because I think that every manager should be an entrepreneur, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. If you don't like the company and you just went there for money, that's never going to work, no matter how many leadership trainings you do.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
You mentioned it again once, so many points. Let me bring Bogdan in on. I was just curious in my mind about, do you still have a practice of regularly expressing to your team, and maybe even to the teams around you, to peer managers and whoever you can actually communicate to, your connection with the company's purpose and mission and so on? Do you make an effort with your associates to make sure they have a way of connecting to, and if yes, how?
This is linked to the engagement question that you asked before,
it is
right?
linked to it, yeah. But it's the why and purpose and mission and vision and values and so on.
Well, I try not to bring my company into this discussion.
It's more your style. Yeah.
Yeah, but engagement, I mean, we're talking about engagement, and we are debating on how or what is the best way to engage people at our places of work, right? Why don't we ask them? What's important for you? What makes you tick? What are you thinking when you're coming to this job? Yeah, I've been at some event at some point where there was this professor from an English university. I don't remember the name. I have this problem with names. But nevertheless, they made a very, good study on that, and they managed to get the fact that somewhere around 60 to 70% of the employees are driven not by salary, not by benefits, but the projects that they are involved in at their place of work. And it's correct for the 60 to 70% of the people, but there are other 30 to 40%, right? So why don't we ask them? In a honest conversation, down to earth.
It's true. And even if you find out there's a variety of asks that people have or priorities and you cannot meet them all, at least the truth is out. Mm-hmm. You will know that maybe you and the other guy or the company and the associate are not a good match. It's probably better to move on to something where it's a good match, and for you to find somebody who can connect with.
Of course, you will not find easy that guy that will tell you, look, I hate this company and I hate you and I don't want to be here. I'm just searching for 3 months to get out of here. It's not going to happen, but these are extremes, right? It's for the rest, It's going to be a very interesting conversation. And you can actually bond on that. You need to create a relationship with those people, with the people that are around you, the team that you're working with, whether or not they are direct reports, if they are your managers, if there are, I know, some people that are in a completely different country and you're just intersecting. If you want to build something together, then you must create a relationship, and you cannot do that without interaction, right? And what's the best way to interact other than asking what makes you tick?
Did this, Rodica, work for you when you were having this session with your team?
It does work very well. We actually have yearly sort of feedback, 360 degrees feedback in the company, and everybody gives a feedback to almost everybody, right, including me. And then we have discussions, one-to-one discussions. But then again, I can do it because, you know, we're a rather small company. So if you're a corporation, maybe not everything can go so deep as I can with my team. But it's very informative and it's extremely useful and it's hygienic, if you want. It's a matter of hygiene of the environment, because a lot of things get solved in these discussions and in these, even in this feedback. You know, this feedback it's a pretty long form that they have to fill in, because they have to mark a lot of people on a lot of things and give explanations and stuff. And also they have to put down a sort of a plan of what they liked most to do, what they disliked most, what they were good at, what they weren't good at, and what they want to learn for next year, what kind of skills they want to develop, etc., etc. And how they worked with everybody. So it's a pretty long form. It probably takes about a couple of hours to fill it in. And then it takes me a lot of time to study and sort of figure out what it means. But it's very informative. And then when we have one-to-one discussions, people actually do say what they feel. And sometimes I get hit hard. Sometimes it's hard, but you gotta be prepared to take feedback. And I think that if you want, one of the most important features of a good leader is the ability to admit when they're wrong, and to admit without, you know, trying to make excuses. Okay, you may give an explanation because sometimes it requires for you to give some kind of explanation.
Context at least.
Exactly, so that it doesn't seem like you never even gave a damn about it. But for instance, I got this feedback, I think it was last year, no, in 2019, before the pandemic. Had a big phenomenon there going on, and a lot of people gave me the feedback that I wasn't giving people feedback. And I was giving people feedback but only on the constructive side. And I wasn't too generous on, you know, patting people and telling them you did a great job, etc., etc. It had been a very tough year. So it was true. I had very little time. I was very much onto the job and trying to make a lot of things work. And when something went wrong, I would go and say, this is not right. But when everything was well, I was like, I don't have to deal with it, thank God. So let's move on, That's the way I behaved. And the people came to me and they almost half of my company said, you know, it's kind of frustrating that you never say I'm doing a good job. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't done this in ages.
Yeah, the easiest, most inexpensive retention tool in the world.
Exactly.
You didn't take time to use.
Exactly. And I was like, but you have to be in a good place yourself. You have to be able to manage your stress very well so that you never get overwhelmed. Because if you get overwhelmed a little bit, it passes on to the whole team or company or whatever it is. And it was a bit painful for me to hear it, but then it was true, and it gave me the opportunity to change this particular thing. It wasn't difficult either. Like you said, it's not such a big deal. You just have to be careful. And yes, you have to be connected with people, like you said. You have to never forget that they're people. They're humans, not just some functions or, you know, some doers.
And your own development, of course, personal development is, of course, also benefiting from this. I don't know if you had ever, you know, some kind of feedback where you learned something from that you may want to share or not. I'm just going to share briefly mine if you want to think about it. once also a 360 feedback. One of the results was among a series of dimensions was that not everybody on my team was thinking that I would be an open-minded leader.
Oh.
And I was thinking, bloody hell, I am open-minded. What are these guys saying? I felt a little bit upset about that. I actually put an extra effort in being open-minded, and people were not seeing that. So for me, so after being initially a little bit hit by that, I started to realize, okay, but it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, or how right it is or how right or wrong it is. That's what people were perceiving.
Yeah, exactly.
And because they're perceiving that, that's not helping me.
Yeah.
Right? It's not helping me with anything that I want to do. So in the end, I just figured out, where were those moments where they were right, or at least I was contributing to the perception, and so that allowed me then to change the style a little bit and so on, and that problem went away. I found that beautiful, to be honest, in hindsight. You anything?
Yeah, it's a very big lesson, this one. That I'm not sure. I remember when I had this, this epiphany, whatever you want to call it. That even if you think you're doing something, the fact that somebody else is telling you that you're doing it completely different is their perception about you, and you must be able to internalize it. Otherwise, you're on completely, divergent paths with that person.
There's that thing about Johari window, if you know about it, right? So then we all have like 4 parts of our knowledge, or the knowledge that is available about us, right? So there's the knowledge is that I know and you know something about me. We all know that thing about me. And there are things that I know about me and you don't know about me. But there's this hidden, this third quadrant where there is something about me that you know and I don't. And that's where the feedback comes in. That's where the feedback is so fruitful and so helpful, because when you give me feedback, you open up that piece of my Johari window where I learned something about me that I did not know, and only you know.
Shining a light onto our blind spots. I think
exactly.
That is actually a good ending for us. We're at the end of our time. Greatly enjoyed the discussion.
Quickly.
As usual, I regret it's just these few minutes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much both for coming. It was wonderful. I knew I had splendid guests today. Right. So thank you everybody for watching. See you next time. Have a good time. Bye-bye.